Yoga is done for many reasons. The reason I do it is for exercise. I find that it helps with strength so that I can fight my way out of a woke mob. Flexibility so I can squeeze my way through a prison tunnel should I ever be arrested for thinking for myself, because you never know these days. And balance. So in case I'm ever tortured and forced to stand on one leg for a long time, I will be able to do so by shifting my weight from one leg to the other. But mainly, I do yoga for exercise because I believe that taking care of my health is my personal responsibility. An article on People.com's health section interviews a yoga teacher. Wait, is that really her picture? Am I being punked? Well, I guess the saying, those who can do, those who can't teach, rings true here. She could have all the knowledge of how to do yoga poses without being able to do them herself. So this woman, Jessamyn Stanley, believes white supremacy has polluted yoga. Not quite sure what that means, but, quote, cultural appropriation in yoga is rampant because we are still living in the legacy of colonization, unquote, Jessamyn Stanley tells People. I see a couple things here that don't make a whole lot of sense. Jessamyn appears to be a black woman. Doesn't yoga come from India? So, by her being a yoga teacher, isn't she culturally appropriating Indian exercise? By her logic anyway, because obviously I don't think that any form of exercise should be limited to a certain culture. If the exercise works for you, then I think you should be able to do it because your health is important, and exercise can be part of that for people who enjoy exercise. Okay, the article says, Jessamyn Stanley needs you to know what yoga is really about, and it's not the poses. Wait, what? When I do yoga, I call it fancy stretching because a lot of times when I have like a sore back or some kind of problem area, there's usually a yoga pose I can do that'll stretch out whatever muscle is being like contracted. I think that's the right word. But basically it makes my muscles relax and then I end up feeling better and feeling more like myself. So fancy stretching is kind of what I thought yoga was about. Okay, let's see what Jessamyn thinks yoga is really about. In her new book, here we go. Basically, Jessamyn is trying to promote her new book. This is all that I think that it is. And she wants to promote her book, which is completely fine. You should be able to do that. But the problem is when you interject things like white supremacy and colonialism because they're fun talking points. And when I say fun, I don't mean fun, I mean annoying. They're like the talking points that are going to get you some attention because people who get annoyed when people say white supremacy all the time are going to pay attention to the article to see what you were complaining about. And then people that are on the other side who are like, yeah, colonialization sucks, are going to read your article too because they want to know what it's about. So basically she's garnering attention by using buzzwords like white supremacy. So that's what I'm seeing right now. So, in her new book, Yoke, My Yoga of Self-Acceptance, the yoga instructor and body activist, that's what she really is. If the title had said, Yoga Body Activist, Jessamyn Stanley, I wouldn't have batted an eye because that is the truth of what this person is. She is an activist and she wants to stir the pot, I guess. Anyway, she shares reflective personal essays that touch upon everything from racism to the cultural appropriation of American yoga, from consumerism to cannabis. I don't know what that means. Cultural appropriation of American yoga. If yoga has been brought to America by like an Indian person and Americans are doing it for exercise, I don't think that's a bad thing, because we're not saying that yoga never originated in India. It's not like just because another culture does something, it doesn't mean that the original culture is somehow now unable to do it. Like, that's, I think, my problem with cultural appropriation, is that people think that when you have two different versions of something, they always think that the old version is somehow like non-existent anymore just because the new version exists. And that's not true. There's all different kinds of yoga, which means that you can pick between whatever one works for you. And I don't see any problem with that. But I'm not one of the people that thinks everything is a slight on humanity, so that's probably why I don't see it that way. Jessamyn continues to say, I realize yoga is a lot more than postures. The postures get to be more complicated, not because you're practicing harder gymnastics or physical postures, but because you're practicing emotional and mental and really spiritual postures. I know for me, exercise does do something for my mental state, where it does help me to feel more positive because I like exercise, but I think it also has something to do with like blood flow. No matter what exercise you're doing, this isn't just for yoga, but like exercise gets your blood pumping and your heart rate up and things like that. And so then I think I've also heard exercise releases endorphins, so then it makes you happy. So that's probably true that you are practicing mental and emotional things, just because when you exercise, blood flows everywhere, including your brain, which is where your mental stuff is. Jessamyn continues, in fact, she says, yoga is not supposed to feel good.
What is that?
Take the example of someone expecting a Zen-like experience from a yoga practice only to be disappointed. You're like, this is hard. Everyone else seems to know what they're doing. I am not good enough. I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe my body is supposed to look different. Maybe my life's supposed to be different. All these feelings start to come up. That's what the postures are leading you towards, is to have that experience. I think that's a projection, because I've never thought any of those things when doing yoga. Sometimes I think, oh man, why does this weird muscle in between my thumb and my index finger hurt today? And it's because I did some weird yoga pose that worked muscles that I didn't know were there. But the whole negative projection of like her thinking her body is wrong or whatever, that's totally her own thing. Okay, so Jessamyn continues to say, I wanted to reflect on what it is to practice yoga when we are, as a society, being forced to reckon with the long, deep, systemic, down-to-the-bone problems. We're being forced to look at things that we've never wanted to look at. And that's all that yoga is looking at the things that you don't want to look at. And ultimately, come hell or high water, accepting them. I mean, yoga's exercise, so I don't know that... I've never done yoga and thought, gee, that was really political, so... The book explores the existence of white supremacy and cultural appropriation in American yoga. Okay, here's the part where I'm probably going to roll my eyes and make fun of her a lot. I would venture to say that everything in our collective society is rooted in white supremacy. What? No, it's not. That's me talking, not her. She continues on to say, I am sure there are many people who would disagree with that. Yep, me. And honestly, I don't care, because I believe that, and I know that's the case, Jessamyn says. She continues to say, I think that we see it show up in a lot of different ways. In the same way it's everywhere else and it has polluted everything else, it's polluted yoga. It's very much a part of how yoga has spread in America. The popularity of yoga really came down to wealthy white people wanting to learn and explore in a very specific way, and that's why yoga has been so white for so long in America. Okay. This, I guess, is the meat of the article, which is this white supremacy, cultural appropriation crap is just ridiculous. See, now I don't even understand what white supremacy is anymore, according to people like Jessamyn, Because it seems to me that they're saying if a white person does it, then it's white supremacy, which is stupid because that's just the most asinine thing I've ever heard. Like, people do things.
Jesus Christ.
So it's like to call it this like white supremacy, like it's some kind of evil that white women are going to do yoga because they want to do fancy stretching because their lower back hurt, is not white supremacy. It's just a person who happened to be white, went to a yoga class, felt good about it, and then decided to keep continuing to do the things that made her feel good. Is that a problem now? Like, I can't exercise because it's white supremacy? Like, really?
Stop extrapolating nonsense.
I love how she doesn't give any examples other than she complains that there's a lot of white people. Oh, she even says wealthy white people. So she's jealous of rich white people wanting to do fancy stretching because their lower backs hurt for a little while. Like, see, this is the kind of nonsense that I expect from an activist who looks like that, who looks like she hasn't done a day of yoga in her life, to sit there and complain that other people do yoga. She's probably jealous that she can't do the poses because the physics of her body kind of looks like it would be extremely difficult for her to do any pose except maybe the one where you're laying down and looking up at the ceiling. Here, she says the appropriation comes from practitioners who are not South Asian, which I'm looking at her and I'm like, I don't think that she's South Asian either. Jessamyn appears to be a black woman, looking at South Asian teachers and saying, I need to do exactly what they're doing. I need to practice yoga exactly how they're practicing it. Yeah, because the South Asian yoga instructors are the ones who know how yoga's done because it originated there, right? So if you want to learn something from someone, wouldn't you go to somebody who has the knowledge of the said something? But according to this, it's wrong now to go and seek knowledge from somebody who knows something, who knows more than you do. That's wrong now. That's white supremacy and cultural appropriation. Like, how is anyone supposed to learn anything in this world of crazy kooky activism?
Can't even with this shit.
Most people would know stuff about their own culture and their own way of life. So if they wanted to learn something new, I don't think that them going to a different culture or finding a different thing is a bad thing. That's how people learn. That's how people have personal growth. Like, the people going to ask the South Asian instructor how to do yoga doesn't mean that they're trying to steal the South Asian person's identity. It just means that they want to learn how to do something correctly, and I don't see anything wrong with that. Okay, so she continues, yoga as a concept exists in so many cultures. Then what are you complaining about cultural appropriation for fuck's sake?
Just be smarter.
It's literally the basis of so many different things. The idea of acceptance and the yoking together of the light and the dark. But these teachers are just saying practice yoga. They're not saying pretend to be Indian. Yeah. So why are you even mad about this? They're not saying steal someone else's ethnic identity, right? Like I just fucking said. They're saying practice the balancing of truth and light within yourself. Yeah, they're teaching you how to do yoga. So I think that when you bring up cultural appropriation in yoga, everyone's butthole clenches because everybody's like, oh shit, I think I might be guilty of this, or I could be a part of this, and that doesn't feel good. And that's the yoga, that's the hard thing. That's the thing that we're being asked to accept. It doesn't mean you have to sit in space of shame about it. Although she probably would rather you sit in shame about it, because that's the whole point of her writing this book, is to make you feel shame about it. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, it just means that you're a person and you're allowed to be that way. I don't understand activists when they talk, because on the one hand they say stuff like cultural appropriation and white supremacy have infiltrated yoga, and then the very next sentence they say, well, it's not like you're trying to steal an Indian's identity. Okay, well, they're contradicting statements, because when you complain about cultural appropriation and white supremacy, you're complaining that Americans have whitewashed the South Asian person's identity, which is not true. So you're saying both happen, but it's like, that's, what are you talking about? Jessamyn talks about coming to terms with her own truth and internalized racism in the essay White Guilt. I see a lot of people point fingers at other people, and I definitely started writing that essay because I had a bone to pick with every person that I have met in the yoga world that I felt was being racist. I don't know what that means. But by the end of it, I realized I don't have shit to say to anybody else that I don't first need to say to myself, and that is the most important work of all. Whatever. Yoga is exercise. If you like doing yoga, go ahead and do it. Don't listen to weird people who tell you that you're culturally appropriating whatever, because you can't culturally appropriate fancy stretching, okay? Everyone stretches. I guess until next time, be civil. Exercise if you want. Don't exercise if you don't want. But try to keep yourself generally healthy, because that's probably going to help you in the long run. So, until then, I'll see you on the next video.